Today down in the comments, I want to hear what you've been watching since we all were inside for a long time. Hello, I'm Adam Caesar. I am the author of Video Night, Tribesman, The Summer Job, Exponential, a bunch of other books that you can read right now, and the upcoming Clown in the Cornfield coming soon from Harper Teen that you can pre-order right now. And this is Project Black T-Shirt, the channel where we take a new or a reissue horror movie, talk about several movies sometimes, and then pair it with a reading recommendation that you will like if you like those movies. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Today's video, we're not going to talk about one movie, we're not going to talk about two movies, we're going to talk about several movies. Because for the past few weeks I've been playing kind of quarantine catch-up, taking Vinegar Syndrome titles off my shelves that I haven't checked out before or for whatever reason didn't watch when they first came out. I caught up on them and watched them. If you're watching this the week this goes up, at the end of this week is going to be Vinegar Syndrome's big halfway to Black Friday sale where they announce secret titles and put out a bunch of exclusive stuff and then discount all the back catalog titles. So if you want to use this as a kind of shopping guide, I'll tell you which ones I really think are worth picking up out of this stack of movies. This isn't going in any kind of particular order, this isn't going in the order I watched them in, but we're going to talk about a fat stack of movies right now. Lightning round, here we go. First is Beyond Evil. Now this is a 1980 film, has a very late 70s, early 80s kind of feel to it. This is a supernatural thriller by director Herb Fried, and if you know Herb Fried, probably know him from his film Graduation Day, which is, to me, one of the best slashers, one of the best kind of non-name brand slashers. I love Graduation Day. It has such an interesting feel to it. It's never boring. It's got such kind of weird asides and characters in a setting that's really fun, kind of high school hijinks setting. Beyond Evil, I'm not gonna lie, it might be one of my least favorite movies that we're gonna talk about in this video, but it's still not without its merits. It's got John Saxon in it, and him and his new wife move to, they don't say where it is, but it's, I believe it's the Philippines. They move to the Philippines to work on a construction job for his kind of friend slash frenemy. The frenemy sets them up in this house that turns out to be haunted. The wife immediately begins to get possessed by the vengeful spirit that lives in that house. It is another one of their kind of trauma archive titles, a pickup from the Trauma vaults, something that Trauma distributed, not something they made. And it's got some cool laser shooting from eye effects and a little bit of a smattering of violence and some really cool local flavor when they go outside of the house and go to kind of all these different like bars and stuff in the Philippines, which is neat. Just a little dull, a little dreary. Not the one I would say you definitely got to pick up during the sale. Next is Unmasked Part 25. And if that cover looks familiar, if that looks like, hey, that looks like Jason, it's very much intentional. This is a British film that I had not heard of. The title card that this Vinegar Syndrome print that they scanned plays with is The Hand of Death. And as you can see, their cover has Braille on it. And this is basically an unofficial kind of meta sequel parody of the Friday the 13th franchise, where it's a British horror film. So Jason is British. The Jason character here is British. He's not called Jason. What's he called? Jackson. He's called Jackson. He's kind of a local celebrity. He wears his hockey mask everywhere he goes because he has the kind of Jason disfigurement. He's a celebrity everywhere he goes. People are like, hey, aren't you the guy from those movies? Aren't you the guy from the Hand of Death movies? And he is a slasher. He is a slasher killer just trying to make it through life in modern London. He falls in love with a girl. The girl is blind, so she doesn't see that he's has this crazy disfigurement, that he is this quote-unquote monster, and he has to fight against his like baser instincts of wanting to murder all the time. It's very funny in some parts, very weirdly dry and philosophical in others, which I feel like is part of the joke. It's a absolute recommend if you are any kind of Friday the 13th or slasher completist, because it is way ahead of its time as far as slasher comedies go and as far as kind of meta takes on this material go. It's not It's not quite to the level of Psychos in Love, which is another Vinegar Syndrome released slasher comedy, slasher romantic comedy, but it definitely has its moments. It has some cool gore. They shoot all over 80s London. It's got a real nice, very British flavor to it. And the way that they explain Jackson's backstory and why he was in the United States with his mother to kind of tie it back to Friday the 13th is very funny and very clever. Next, we're going to talk about The Corruption of Chris Miller. This is a 1973 film directed by Juan Antonio Bardem. J.A. Bardem is how he's credited. This is the best movie, one of the best movies we're going to talk about, if not the best movie. They're calling it a giallo. It's a Spanish giallo. Only barely counts as a giallo because it doesn't have a lot of the hallmarks of that subgenre. Most importantly, it doesn't at all kind of hinge on dream logic or any kind of leap into esoteria or art house filmmaking. It's very, very, very lush production, very kind of traditional presentation of a thriller psychodrama story. It does have this like cool killer on the cover, and that killer does make an appearance. And there's this really brava scene in the middle where this killer is besieging a farmhouse. But that's not really the story here. The story here is kind of this psychodrama that happens between a woman and her stepmother. The father either left or has been killed. It's unclear, and he's left them alone in this large estate, this large house that kind of locks up, and they treat like Fort Knox because they're kind of scared of the world outside. And this drifter that comes through and kind of starts seducing the stepmother and seducing the stepdaughter, and this real mix-up, crazy relationship drama that has a kind of a lot of murder and a lot of madness mixed in. But this is a beautiful looking movie. Beautifully shot, wonderfully acted, just really takes its time. It has several moments that are genuinely shocking and surprising, and it's really, really, really a cut above. I don't know if they still have the limited edition version with the slipcase, but I'm sure they have the regular version during the halfway to Black Friday sale. So if you're gonna pick something up, if you're loading up your cart, I highly, highly, highly recommend you get The Corruption of Chris Miller. It's really, really good. Next is a movie that I've been waiting to see for a long time. It's Dolly Dearest. Now, I remember this VHS case. This is a 1991 movie. It's directed by Maria Elise, and it stars Denise Crosby of Pet Sematary and briefly of Star Trek: The Next Generation fame. This is a movie I always kind of was like, oh, I was drawn to that because as a kid, as a grown man, I love the Child's Play series. I love those films. I'm a huge kind of Chucky fan, and this is very clearly a Child's Play knockoff. But that doesn't mean it's completely without merit. It's really fun. It's got Denise Crosby. It's got Rip Torn as an archaeologist. It has the way that the killer doll comes to life in this movie is a family moves down to Mexico. The father is going to kind of open up a doll making factory, a doll facility, but it's right next to this kind of ancient Mayan cursed tomb. And in the pre-credit sequence, the tomb opens up. These vengeful ghosts escape, and they find their way into the doll of Dolly Dearest. But what makes Dolly Dearest special is that there are multiple dolls, and it's a whole factory of dolls come to life. It is fun. It does have interesting animatronic effects. The doll looks really cool. The doll looks really creepy. There's some good kind of your traditional creepy doll. Did it just move? Is it over there now? The climax left me a little. It feels a little cheap, a little hamstrung, but still very enjoyable. And I'm sure this is a movie that people have either fond feelings for or no feeling for at all, because it was kind of that video store staple. I'd never seen it until now. I'm glad I've seen it. Not my favorite thing on this list, but still very enjoyable. And they do a really nice job in the features. They talk to Denise Crosby, and she talks for a long time and is very kind of open about the process of making this movie. Next, one of the real gems of this sitting and watching a lot of movies over the last few weeks, Deadline. This is called Deadline This is a Canadian film directed by a guy named Mario Azzopardi, and I'd never heard of it until Vinegar Syndrome released this. I'd never heard of it until I'm in a group text with a lot of buddies who get a lot of these movies too, who are big fans of Vinegar Syndrome, and my buddy Pat Lacey kind of went into the group text and was like, "You guys have to watch Deadline." But it is about a quasi Stephen King-esque author who is facing charges that his books, his hit books that have movies based on them, are kind of trash and are kind of hurting society, and why do we need this violent media? And he kind of has to defend himself, but at the same time, he has writer's block, and he kind of can't come up with the next thing. So it's this kind of character study drama of this guy, and he's fighting with his wife, and he's not the best dad to his kids because he's trying to work all the time, and I don't know whether it's the subject matter, being an author myself, but I really did connect with this movie. It really did give me kind of anxiety and made me feel bad. It's kind of a feel-bad movie, but all interspersed through a dark character drama, there's all these recreations of scenes from his books and scenes from the movies that are based on his books. And they're awesome. They're almost like dream sequences because they're kind of free of context, or you get these little creepy short films, but they're gory and mean and really, really awesome. So yeah, Deadline is the feel bad movie of the summer. You gotta check this one out. This is a great, really underrated movie. I'd never heard of it until now. Just a real joy. I really love this. Now, the last movie that I watched during quarantine, and I'm going to talk about two more because I think they're really good, and I think you should check them out during the sale. But I watched them pre-lockdown. But this is Play Dead. This is another Troma kind of catalog title, another Troma distributed film, not Troma made. So it was made in 1981, but wasn't released until several years later. It is, the cover makes you think Man's Best Friend, makes you think Cujo, kind of. It is a late 70s, early 80s feeling, very tame, almost feels like movie of the week or made for TV movie, where Yvonne DiCarlo, Lily Munster from the Munsters, gets this dog. She's training this dog in a weirdly satanic way. The dog has like a little like pentagram on her leash. The dog's name is Greta, a Rottweiler, and she's using this dog to kind of curse or get back at her ex-husband's kids. It's very convoluted. There's like a very convoluted revenge and inheritance plot that barely makes sense, but so much of the movie is dedicated to this discussion of why she's giving them a haunted satanic dog that's going to kill them. And what's great about this movie is that the dog, Greta, doesn't kill people. She doesn't maul them. Well, she mauls one person, but she doesn't maul them. She's not like an evil dog that way. She's a good dog. If you like, the cutaways to Greta are hysterical because it's like the most, I mean, this cover makes it look like she's a vicious beast, but it's just the most like fine house dog you've ever seen. But she chokes someone with a leash. She puts a hair dryer in a bathtub to electrocute them. She unlocks a parking brake. She does all this kind of stuff. It's almost like The Omen or like Final Destination. These kind of like Rube Goldberg machine deaths. And there are a few of them, and they're really fun. The movie feels padded. It feels like they really stretched a lot of stuff to get to their hour and 25-minute runtime. But this is a Texas-made movie, and it has a lot of suburban Houston area. It was funded or produced by a local construction company. It's just very odd. There's not a whole lot of information, too, in the special features. There's one fairly significant interview with the lead actress, and then there's a 5-minute kind of cut-down interview with the director, and he has a heavy accent. They never really even get to where he's from. I looked into it. His name is Peter Whitman, and he discusses about how the movies came about. He only made 2 films, and he made them with his wife, Francine Radine. She's producing, and he made it sound like her connections were what got them the money, that she was the one interested in making films. Really, really weird movie. Whenever I do videos like this, or whenever I do like list videos, I'll recommend something that's very specifically works for me and I know will not work for the vast majority of people. Last time I did a Vinegar Syndrome video, I think it was, it was Bloodsuckers from Outer Space, which I endorsed, and then I had a bunch of people in the comments telling me how much Bloodsuckers from Outer Space sucked and how I was stupid for recommending it. Yeah, Play Dead's great, and for those people, they're going to watch Play Dead, and they're going to be like, what's wrong with you? This is terrible. I really, really enjoyed it. It's got a great feeling to it. It's just a good kind of hangout, goofy movie with a lot of questionable editing choices and very odd performance choices and very odd subplots. I really, really liked it. Now, the next 2 movies I'm going to talk about, I watched months and months ago. Because the sale's coming up and because these are really great movies, I think you should check these out. First one is Hollywood Horror House. This is directed by a guy named Donald Wolfe in the early 70s, like I think it's 1970. But I think they reshot footage of it. Like, so some of this is like footage added by the producers later. It is kind of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, or Who Slew Auntie Roo, or Sunset Boulevard. Kind of like hagsploitation. It's very Sunset Boulevard. It's basically the exact same plot of Sunset Boulevard, except only if the young man that came to live at the aging starlet's house, if he was a psychopath. So this is a really, really fun movie. Kind of, yeah, Psycho meets Sunset Boulevard, where you have this kind of really sleazy sociopath guy cuddling up with an old silent movie starlet. And as she's going insane, as she's like planning her comeback, thinking she's gonna make a comeback with this kid by her side, he's really manipulating her and he's being a real cad. But some great kind of location LA shooting. Some really, when we get the bad guys, or they're all bad guys, but if we get one of the bad guys' origin stories, this awesome like psychedelic, like you can see on the cover, they kind of stylized. It's awesome psychedelic dream sequences. Really, really kind of a movie that walks a line between being fun and candy-colored, and almost there's a party sequence that feels like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. It has this real vibrancy to it, and a real brightness to the actual screen, to like what you're seeing. But the content is really dark and really a little bit of a bummer. Really, really good movie. A good mix of fun and weird and unexpected. This one I feel like flew under the radar. I didn't see many people talking about this, but this is one of the better Vinegar Syndrome releases of the last year or two, I feel like. And then maybe my favorite movie Vinegar Syndrome's ever released is the Candy Snatchers. And I think this was part of their Black Friday sale last year, and I'm not even sure if they're doing, like if they're allowed to do a non-slipped case version of it. But if you can get this, if it's still available, highly, 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 highly recommend the Candy Snatchers. It starts as a very simple movie. It is a real downbeat, real kind of realistic kidnapping movie where these 3 crooks, all different levels of empathetic, all different levels of like human almost, 2 guys and a girl. They kidnap a banker's daughter, and they think this is like their big payday. They think they're gonna extort this guy, and then things go horribly wrong for a number of different reasons. And it's downbeat. It's exciting. It's really filled with twists and weird digressions where you're like, how is this going to feed back into the main story? And then it does, because we've got to follow a lot of different characters all around what's going on. But it is one of the, like I said, one of the best movies, if not the best movie that Vinegar Syndrome has released. And they do an amazing job. It looks awesome. The restoration's great. The features, you can tell they knew this is a great movie because they get a lot of, they filmed a lot of new interview footage and how this movie was made and how this movie came about. But it's the Candy Snatchers rules. It is it's definitely not for everyone because it's not an upbeat movie, but it is really undeniably a great kind of crime horror hybrid. Really awesome. Before we do the book recommendation, I do want to mention that I know this is a weird time to be buying books. It's a weird time to be selling books. Believe me. And a lot of people are not wanting to directly use Amazon. A lot of people are wanting to support their local bookstores, and you should definitely do that, especially if your bookstore is open for curbside or whatever. If you can call and get mail order, do that. What I've done, using a website called Bookshop, it's bookshop.org. I put the link down below. I've made a list of all the books that I've talked about recently, including this week's book recommendation, and I put them in there. This is a website that lets you order direct from Ingram, direct from the distributor, and then they give a certain percentage of your order directly to independent bookshops, and they're raising money for independent bookshops. The prices are a little different than Amazon for most things, but if you're looking to buy these books in paperback or hardcover and you want to support local bookstores, it's a good way of doing it. I put my affiliate information down below, and I usually put the Amazon stuff down there too. So after you've watched, 8 movies we talked about, mentioned some others, and after you watch these 8 movies, you're probably going to want to kick back with a nice, easy read. And this week's book recommendation is Blood-Sucking Freak: The Life and Incredible Films of Joel M. Reed. This is written by John Spinar, and this is kind of a biography, a interview book, a kind of slice of life, filmography of Joel M. Reed, who made whose most famous film is The Incredible Torture Show or Blood-Sucking Freaks. Really a hard movie to watch, really a gross, grody. When I think of Times Square filth, I usually think of Frank Henenlotter, and I think of it in a nice way when I think of Frank Henenlotter. But when I think of it, when I think of that same place and period, and I think of bad things, I think of Blood-Sucking Freak. It's not 100% a movie for me. It's not 100% a movie I enjoy, but I loved this book. For the first few chapters, we're following John Spinar and how he met Joel M. Reed and how he decided to write this book and how he got these interviews that we're reading in the book. And then it goes back to going chronologically through each of Reed's films, which are definitely not classics, but the way that the story is told, he weaves in like Joe Sarno and all these different exploitation filmmakers from New York at the same time. And you kind of realize how interconnected the scene was, and how all these people knew each other, and how even these exploitation guys, these guys that made movies that no one kind of will admit to have seen, how they kind of interacted with Broadway. Like he interviews him in Sardi's for many of the, which is like a famous theater bar. For many of the interviews are in Sardi's, and he talks about how he knew like all these different stars and Hollywood stars and how these films were made. It's just really interesting. Gives you a really thorough snapshot of this point in filmmaking, in this kind of filmmaking. Very similar to The Ghastly One, the book about Andy Milligan. It's really, really worth reading, even if you don't particularly like Reed's films or aren't particularly interested in Reed's films. But if you like Vinegar Syndrome and you like the kinds of movies we were just talking about, this will be up your alley. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to find out more about me, I've got links below to my website and tell you everything about it. If you want to check out Clown of the Cornfield this August, Harper Teen, please, please, please pre-order. I've got the links to pre-order down below. Pre-orders help me out so much. Reviews on all my books, if you've read any of my books, if you listen to the audiobooks, if you've read the ebooks, if you've read the paperbacks, if you've checked those out, please tell your friends about them, please review them. Let everyone know, because it helps me out so much and it helps me keep this channel running. It keeps me talking about all this stuff and keeps me writing and keeps me doing what I love. So thank you so much, and I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, go watch some movies and go read some books, guys.